a city transformed. But beneath the gleaming skyscrapers and the hum of modern life, echoes remain. Whispers of a man whose shadow once stretched across continents, a name synonymous with unimaginable wealth, audacious power, and unbridled terror. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria. To his loyalists, a modern-day Robin Hood; to his enemies, a monster. But to truly grasp the phenomenon of El Patron, we must first understand the fertile, tumultuous ground from which he sprang. December 1st, 1949, in Rio Negro, a small town in Antioquia, Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria entered the world. Son of a struggling farmer and a teacher, humble beginnings for a man who would redefine excess. But Rio Negro was merely a prelude. It was Medellín, to which his family soon moved, that forged him. A city in a relentless, often chaotic, boom. From a regional hub, it exploded into Colombia's industrial capital, its population swelling, its fabric straining. This rapid growth, however, was uneven. Prosperity existed, side by side with grinding urban poverty. And it was in this crucible of ambition and desperation that a young Pablo began to find his way, not through industry, but through audacious disregard for the law. By 14, he was entrenched in street gangs. School became irrelevant. His early criminal escapades, while petty by later standards, the rumored stealing and re-engraving of gravestones, the fake diplomas, hinted at a deeper ambition and a violent streak. A lost fight, then a gun pulled, a rival shot in the foot. His first taste of a Colombian prison cell. A warning sign, largely unheeded. Pablo Escobar's trajectory wasn't an isolated phenomenon. It was inextricably woven into the turbulent tapestry of 20th century Colombia, a nation grappling with its own identity, perpetually under the watchful, often intrusive eye of the United States. From early concerns over the Isthmus of Panama, U.S. influence shifted to economic interests: coffee, bananas. Conservative politicians often aligned with American business, fostering an economy that, for many, bred endemic poverty. Then came the seismic shift. 1948, the assassination of populist leader Jorge Eliezer Gaitan. The liberal-conservative divide exploded into a decade of civil war. La violencia. Over 200,000 lives lost, a nation scarred. An uneasy national front followed. But beneath the surface, the Cold War raged. With covert U.S. backing, Colombia cracked down on left-leaning Marxist groups, desperate to prevent another Cuba in the Americas. The result? In 1964, the birth of a new conflict. The guerrilla war waged by the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, the FARC, and other paramilitary organizations. These groups effectively carved out vast swathes of rural Colombia, regions where state authority barely existed. It was precisely at this time, through the 1960s and 70s, that global demand for illicit narcotics, particularly cocaine, exploded. Colombia, with its ideal climate for the coca plant, its sprawling, lawless jungles, was poised. The perfect storm was brewing. Initially, groups like the FARC didn't traffic drugs directly, but they controlled the territories where coca was grown and processed. They taxed the producers, turning a blind eye, and in doing so, created a symbiotic relationship that would fuel their insurgency and the burgeoning drug trade alike. This, then, was the world into which Pablo Escobar, the ambitious young criminal, was fully emerging. By his late teens, the man who would later absurdly claim to be just a decent man who exports flowers was knee-deep in organized crime. Initially, contraband cigarettes, then audacious car thefts, and a string of high-profile kidnappings for ransom. But Escobar's ambition was singular. He wanted to be rich, fast. The path soon became clear. Drugs. Marijuana first, then the far more lucrative cocaine. When he courted the teenager Maria Victoria Henao, her mother saw the danger. "Unless you're willing to spend much of your life visiting him in prison," she warned. Maria was undeterred. They married in 1976. He was 26, she 15. They would have 2 children, Juan and Manuela. It was in the mid-70s, on the cusp of his marriage, that Pablo truly entered the cocaine trade, brought in by figures like Griselda Blanco. Cocaine, once a niche drug in the US, exploded with the disco scene, creating an insatiable demand. Colombia now was poised to fulfill it. Escobar began by delivering coca paste to processing labs. But his mind raced. He soon cut out the middlemen, organizing his own operations to fly processed cocaine directly into the United States. A network of ambition, ruthlessness, and sheer audacity was coalescing. Unbeknownst to them, they were fashioning the nascent Medellín Cartel. Yet, it almost ended before it truly began. May 1976, Pablo and associates arrested, caught with 18 kilograms of coca paste. His first instinct? Bribes. When that failed, a stark, chilling escalation. The arresting officers were murdered. The charges vanished. He walked free. This act was not an anomaly. It was a blueprint. Escobar's rule was simple. Violence, always, if it secured his advantage. For all his later public relations, his empire was built on a foundation of thousands of deaths. This, we must never forget. The late 1970s marked the Medellín Cartel's explosive ascent, not just due to surging demand, but to cunning, systematic import methods. Central to this were 2 figures, Carlos Leder, a German Colombian, and George Jung, an American. Fresh from a Connecticut prison, they conceived a plan for cocaine unlike any other. Their strategy: smuggle through the Caribbean, predominantly into Florida. Escobar hired them, and their vision soon expanded. In 1978, Leder began acquiring Norman's Cay, a Bahamian island. Through intimidation, even murder, he transformed it into a personal fiefdom, a massive cocaine depot. Millions were poured into a runway, warehouses. For years, Norman's Cay was the cartel's private air hub, a mere stone's throw from the world's largest cocaine market. Over 300 kilograms flowed through daily. Escobar, Leder, and their associates were becoming billionaires. Another key player was Barry Seal, a Louisiana airline pilot. He perfected low-flying routes over the Gulf of Mexico, dropping packages into rural Louisiana for ground teams to collect and distribute. But Seal's utility became a double-edged sword. Indicted by the DEA in 1983, he turned informant, providing extensive intel on Escobar. The cartel soon learned. In February 1986, Barry Seal was assassinated. The scale was staggering. Several tons of cocaine smuggled into America and Europe weekly. Profits soared, $60 million a day, upwards of $20 billion annually. Leder himself famously offered to pay Colombia's national debt. Twice. The operation transcended borders, acquiring coca paste from Peru and Bolivia. A true continent-spanning industry, built on powder and blood. With such unimaginable wealth, Escobar began to build his own private kingdoms, concrete manifestations of his illicit dominion. Foremost among them, the Hacienda Nápoles, some 20 square kilometers of land near Puerto Triunfo, transformed into a sprawling paradise for him and his family. It boasted a magnificent Spanish colonial house, a whimsical sculpture park, and a zoo filled with exotic animals imported directly to Colombia. Zebras, antelopes, elephants, giraffes, ostriches, ponies. But none captivated Pablo like the hippos. They thrived in the Colombian climate, reproducing. Today, their descendants form a wild, feral population, a bizarre living legacy of Escobar's extravagance. Beyond the wildlife, a vast collection of vintage and luxury cars, motorcycles, a kart racing track, and even a bull ring. His own private airport for visitors, though his true cargo flew elsewhere. He even dreamed of an ancient Greek-style Acropolis. But even for Pablo, some dreams remained unrealized. Nápoles wasn't his only trophy. Incredibly, in the late 1970s, he acquired a massive pink mansion on Miami Beach, registered under his own name, a stark testament to his then relative anonymity before global infamy. It would, of course, later be seized by the US government. And then, Isla Grande, off Colombia's northern coast. Another grand estate, mansion, apartments, more imported animals, pools, a helipad. These were merely the most extravagant. Hundreds of other properties across Colombia served a more practical purpose, hiding money, vast, unspendable sums. Much was laundered through Panama, often via gold, but even those methods had limits. Instead, huge tranches of cash were simply hidden. Take the mansion with the retractable jacuzzi, beneath which lay tens of millions. A poor family was given the house, unaware of its secret, only asked to leave occasionally. Even today, Pablo's hidden fortunes emerge. In 2020, his nephew, Nicolas Escobar, discovered $18 million in a wall. With unimaginable profits came an ever-present peril: extradition. In September 1979, Colombia signed an extradition treaty with the US, threatening drug smugglers with American prisons, a fate far more severe than any sentence in a corruptible Colombian system. This treaty, effective March 1982, became Escobar's gravest fear. His response was multi-pronged. On one hand, a charm offensive, the self-created image of a Colombian Robin Hood. He distributed cash, funded soccer stadiums, parks, and civic amenities. He opened Hacienda Nápoles to the public, even dressed as Santa Claus at Christmas, handing out presents in poorer neighborhoods. He bought adoration, skillfully exploiting a populace neglected by their government. On the other hand, a brazen political maneuver. In 1982, he ran for the Colombian Liberal Party, campaigning directly against the extradition treaty, painting it as a surrender of national sovereignty. Critics emerged, some silenced with bullets. Yet, through intimidation and populism, he won a seat in the Chamber of Representatives. A smokescreen, perhaps, but one that generated unwanted attention. This political foray provoked the conservative establishment. President Belisario Betancourt initiated a campaign. Justice Minister Rodrigo Lara Bonilla took a hard stance. A media storm erupted, led by El Espectador, detailing his 1976 arrest, his cover-ups. Even his affair with TV presenter Virginia Vallejo became public, creating personal crisis alongside political pressure. His US visa was cancelled, his immunity revoked. On January 20th, 1984, Pablo resigned, defiantly proclaiming he would continue to fight against oligarchies and injustices. It was a declaration of war. 3 months later, April 30th, 1984. Justice Minister Rodrigo Lara Bonilla, sitting in traffic in Bogotá, was gunned down by 2 men on a Yamaha motorcycle on Escobar's orders. A direct assault on the Colombian state. The extradition treaty was now fully enforced. Pablo fled temporarily to Panama, then Nicaragua, returning to Colombia late 1984 with a renewed deadly resolve. He sought new allies. The 19th of April movement, M19, a powerful guerrilla group. With Escobar's encouragement and funds, they prepared for an audacious strike. November 6, 1985. 36 M19 fighters stormed the Palace of Justice, Colombia's Supreme Court in Bogotá. Over 300 hostages taken, including most of the Supreme Court judges. Demands for the treaty's renouncement, for Betancourt's resignation. Pablo had ignited a full-blown military conflict in the heart of the capital. The next day, after failed negotiations, the army stormed the palace. Nearly 100 died, including M19 fighters and half the Supreme Court justices. For Escobar, a perverse benefit. Vast tranches of incriminating evidence against traffickers were destroyed in the fire. The government was lambasted. The stage was now set for an even bloodier confrontation. With Virgilio Barco's election in 1986, a new, tougher era began, and an intercepted convoy of Escobar's cars in January 1987 was merely the opening salvo of the final, desperate years of the King of Cocaine.